Welcome to Meaningful Signs of the Times program. The Bible speaks of the sons of Issachar, a tribe of Israel, with the commendation that they understood the signs of the times. I'm Pastor Steve from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Guthrie Center. As our name suggests, we are very interested in the second coming or advent of Jesus. While there are many teachings on the specific signs, which can cause fear and concern, our intention is to educate people on the nature of the signs so they can be prepared for what is happening and will happen in the world prior to the return of Christ. In other words, we want to provide useful applications that can benefit each person's life. Our program today is titled, Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled. People are looking at events in the world and wondering what it all means. It is easy to become fearful of the events if they are not understood in their proper context. We will explore these contexts in future messages, but for today we want to deal with the issue of fear. Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 24, verse 12, that the love of many will turn cold because of the effects of the events and their fear of what is happening. It is important, therefore, to understand what Jesus is telling us regarding these events and why they are occurring. Jesus knew that these days were coming, and he wanted his disciples to understand the importance of these events. These events are not to strike fear in people, but instead they are intended to comfort us with the knowledge that God foreknew the events, and God is maintaining his authority over the affairs of humanity. It is comforting to know that God is not surprised by these events, and he has a plan to correct the evils of the world. Our part is to trust God, follow his instructions, and prepare to be members of his kingdom. Let us examine the words of Jesus pertaining to the events of today. I will be reading from the 24th chapter of Matthew, beginning in verse 3. Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. The word sorrows refers to travail or birth pains. I was able to witness this process in 4 blessed instances. The first contractions of labor are of a lesser intensity and are far apart. But as the time of delivery nears, the contractions become more intense and more frequent. This is what is happening in the world today, with wars and violence, a greater frequency of natural disasters, pestilences and famines, and the moral breakdown of society. These events are all signs of Christ's impending return. So, how are we to react to such events? With fear and trembling? No. We should be aware of the events, but if our faith and trust is in God, then we have nothing to fear. I'm reminded of a time when the disciples were in a boat traveling across the Sea of Galilee, and a great storm arose. The waves were crashing on the boat and filling it with water. The disciples were in a panic, but Jesus lay sleeping in the boat. The disciples woke him and pleaded with him, Master, we are perishing. Jesus calmly arose, and he gave them a gentle rebuke. Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Jesus then rebuked the storm, restoring calm, and probably went back to sleep. It is easy for us to get fearful in the midst of the storms of our life. But Jesus is there with us, and just as Jesus knew his Father would protect him, we can be assured that Jesus will watch over us. It doesn't mean that we will never experience troubles or storms, but it does mean that Jesus is with us, and he is using each trial and challenge to build our Christian character. There are two perspectives that Jesus wants us to understand regarding these storms and trials. These trials are for our benefit, and regardless of how the trial ends, God was in control. We must let God be in control so that the proper outcome is effected. Paul tells us in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, that all things work out for good for those who love God. Loving God means to trust him in all things. This is why we can follow James's advice in James chapter 1, verse 2. Count it all joy when we fall into diverse trials. It seems strange to be joyful about trials, but when we understand that these trials are building our Christian character and they're preparing us for eternity, then we can be joyful. And the good news is that the pain and suffering we experience now is nothing compared to the glory that we will experience for all eternity. There will be no more pain or suffering or death, and there will be wonders beyond our imagination. So it behooves us to hang in there during the storm, for a very long time of calm is going to come. The second perspective is that God is always with us as we go through these trials. It's one thing to celebrate with God when we're on the mountaintop, but it is another thing when we experience God in the valleys of life. It is in the valleys that we can experience the intimate love of God as he is beside us through the valley journey. It is in the valleys that we draw closer to God. I think of the footprints poem, where there were two sets of footprints in the sand. But the question arose of where Jesus went when there was only one set of footprints. Jesus tells us that that is the time that he is carrying us through the trial. With Jesus with us, what do we have to fear? I appreciate the encouragement in Hebrews chapter 13, verses 5 and 6. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? You see that Jesus knew very well the trials that we would face. So he gave this encouraging word to his disciples in John 14, verses 1 through 3. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And again in verse 27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Jesus does not want us to be fearful of the events of the world, for he is there with us. It is proper in every trial to turn to Jesus and confess that we do not understand fully why we are going through what we're going through, but that we will trust him to get us through the trial. This theme of not fearing is found in the following references. John chapter 10, verse 29. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of my Father's hand. No power, foe, or trial can force us out of the hand of Jesus. We are secure in him as we place our trust in him. Paul states that nothing can separate us from the love of God. He says, shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? We can be confident in our relationship with God. In Romans chapter 8, verse 31, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? God is stronger than any force of trial against us. So why should we fear? Psalm chapter 27, verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. With whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. And of whom shall I be afraid? Great questions. But I think you know the answer by now. Psalm chapter 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. Selah. Can what we experience get more calamitous than this? I like this verse because it speaks to a common situation we all face. It may seem like the world is coming to an end in our life. Everything is going wrong. But God is with us doing his work in our life. I could go on with similar verses, but these should suffice. God really does not want us to fear about what is going on in the world. We should be aware and be prudent in our actions, but our hearts should be calm and full of praise for the wonderful God that we love. Let me pray for you. Father, may the people listening now know you as the one who is with them, and you are the source of our comfort. Help us face these trials with joy and peace, knowing that you are in control. And help us to comfort others who are struggling. We thank you for your many blessings, and we know that you will be faithful in this trial as well. Amen. You may find out more information regarding our church and our beliefs on our website at GuthrieCenterSDA.com. That was GuthrieCenterSDA.com, where you can contact me with your questions about this message or your faith walk. You can also reach me at Pastor Steve at netins.net. That's Pastor Steve at netins.net. And view our Facebook page at Guthrie Center SDA Church. We look forward to being with you next time.